All right, welcome back. And it's just that time that we are having that discussion about devolution today on People and Politics. It is the 7th Devolution Conference taking place in Makueni County. And it's going to be a busy week there for the county chiefs and even other stakeholders in the government and even from the non-governmental organizations, just to understand how devolution has been since inception to date. So as Mwananchi, what are some of the things that we need to understand as far as devolution is concerned? How has it affected you? Have you been receiving the services that you require as a Mwananchi? Okay, so the governors will be down there in Makueni County for that particular function, and of course we also have our reporters on the ground who will be giving us the full details of what's happening there as far as that conference is concerned. That will be coming later on in our subsequent bulletins at 7 and 9 p.m. So stick around. But how about right now? We go straight to our discussion, and with me I have got Alex Manyasi, who is a governance expert, joining me in studio to help us understand better the issue of devolution, as well as Tabitha Ogutu joining me via Zoom all the way from Siaya County. First of all, let me welcome you in studio. Alex, good morning.
Morning to you. How are you?
Welcome.
Asante san.
Let's start by asking you this particular question, is that it's happening in Makueni County. And of course, it's been happening on a rotational basis.
Yeah.
Different counties, it was in Kisumu, the other day it was in Bomet, and it's been happening across the country for quite some time. What are some of the hits and misses so far as we come to the last devolution conference in Makueni?
Yeah, I think so. It might not necessarily be the last devolution conference, but for the sitting governors, it will be, because obviously we know that next year we'll have elections, and by the time they think about having another conference, probably it will be a different set of governors.
Yes.
So to speak, you're right in that sense. Devolution, probably a bit of understanding why there was a clamor for devolution. Kenyans wanted several things which were going wrong then. The first thing was there was a lot of centralization of power. And so Kenyans clamored before the 2020 constitution, thinking about then they felt like power was too far away from them. And so the intention then was that we will diffuse the concentration of power from the presidency, so that every community feels like, and I'm not sure we have changed that yet, every community was supposed to feel like there was power closer to them. That's one. Secondly, there was a lot of concentration of resources at the center, and so the presidency, so to speak, had everything and every control around resources, and so State House determined where the roads will go. They determined where the schools will go, and that's why it made it very possible. For example, the famous roadside declarations. A president will show up in a place and say, "I make a declaration that you have a school." So Kenyans wanted to move that away from the presidency, so that then development is placed closer to them through resourcing. But beyond that, service delivery was probably the major aspect of why Kenyans wanted a new constitution. Service delivery, in the sense that you will find, and I'll explain why there's still a miss on that. Kenyans wanted, if they wanted an ID, for example, they wanted it close to them. They wanted to access the offices as close as possible. If they wanted an administrator to speak to, then they would have an easy access to those offices. And that's why then devolution came in to do exactly that. The new constitution under devolvement of powers and all the privileges and offices was meant to ensure that Kenyans then have access to the services as close to them as possible. Now, why I think that some of those things probably have not worked as they should or as were expected. One, we still have this thing called provincial administration. Let me start from there. Provincial administration, so to speak, under the constitution, they were supposed to be phased out. literally what was to happen was that the counties were supposed to get to a point where they have structures up to the village level, to the so-called village administrators that are causing a lot of heat in some counties like Bungoma, where then the village administrators and the ward administrators, sub-county administrators, and the county level, all those structures were supposed to come in fully so that they offer services to the lowest point possible. Why was that the case? It's because if you devolve agriculture, you devolve health, you devolve basic education, you devolve the only thing that we did not devolve was actually security, foreign relations, and education, but not in totality. Part of education, which is ECD, belongs to the education above ECD still belongs to the center. So those are three, which are not 100%. And so the expectation is that Mwananchi will not have needed to go elsewhere and look for national government if they needed services, because 90% of the services then will be devolved
to the doorstep.
Yes. Okay. Now that's why the provincial administration, technically, if there were any structures of the provincial administration, as was called then, then will have been either security related, or education related, or foreign affairs related. And on all those things, the only thing that remains relevant is security. Yes. Because there's no other reason why, for example, the provincial administration will still be existing the way it exists today. Now, that's why some of us have challenges understanding, for example, why counties are hiring ward administrators, and yet the national structures have remained the same. Because some would argue that they have duplicated their duties. That's a problem. That's a problem, because the national structures have remained the same. That's why I was saying the intention was not that the national structures will remain the same. The intention was that as the counties pick up, then the national structures will be phased out, which did not happen. As you can see, national government is still hiring chiefs, still hiring assistant chiefs, still hiring DOs, and they're still responsible and answerable to the Ministry of Interior. Exactly. Let me bring in Tabitha at this particular juncture. Tabitha, all the way from Siaya. First of all, good morning once again. How is Siaya County doing?
Thank you very much. Siaya County is doing fine. We are just working hard, farms, we have rain, we just keeping peaceful, and at the same time anticipating this devolution conference that is set ahead of us. Absolutely. So we are quite good back in there.
Talk of the devolution conference. What are some of the hits and misses that you can talk about thus far?
I think devolution has been the best idea, if you ask me, from the time of its conception, because basically it was meant to bring services closer from the national government to the people at the lowest or the local levels. So to some extent, what I will consider as one achievement of devolution is the fact that we are able to have administration at the lowest level, which is the county. And therefore, there is a structure in place whereby we know that we can access some of the services very closer to us, compared to the time before we had devolution, where operations of the government was so centralized at the national government. So for devolution, I would say that we've seen operationalization of a few other social amenities which have been made to be very local, and therefore we are able to experience leadership at a very closer end. But at the same time, devolution, somebody will argue that it has even made corruption to be even more rampant, or maybe even the use of public resources. And we've seen cases where we've seen even governors buying wheelbarrows at very hefty cost. And somebody will argue these are some of the things.
Manyasi loves to talk about that. Tabitha, Manyasi is the non-carcinogenic wheelbarrow. We remember that.
I can imagine. And so some have become very rich through devolution. We've seen malpractices, we've seen infringement of even, people's rights being even more outstretched. But then that doesn't underscore the main purpose why devolution came by. And I can say that we have seen even many counties and even parts of the country growing up or even becoming better as a result of them having access to this, through those funds allocated to them at their counties then become better. So I won't say devolution is a bad idea. Devolution is the best idea. It's just that now the implementation at the local governance level, it might be the challenge for some of the counties. Yes.
Yeah, perhaps, Alex, most of the governors are actually first-time governors under the current regime and the current dispensation of excuse that, they were trying to join the dots and see whether it's going to work. But we can say that most of the governors got it right from the onset.
Depending on which county, to be honest, any governor who put in extra effort, they made a lot of impact. I say that because most counties, apart from Kisumu, Nairobi and Mombasa, and some bit of Nakuru, most counties did not have any infrastructure.
Yeah.
So any county governor who came in the first time and attempted to do anything, they were actually visible. Not because they were doing the best, but it's because wananchi were seeing those services for the first time.
They had a lot of expectation.
Yes, and the unfortunate bit is that some of them took advantage of the fact that there was nothing to actually plan the resources. The only mishap and the only starting point that I will consider as having been a terrible start is the fact that when devolution began, most counties actually inherited local government employees. Now, local government employees, the way they were employed and the way the local government was structured was not a government like today. And so you'll find that there were some employees who were below Form 4. Actually, most of them. So they had they were not at the level, and it was not their mistake. They were not at the level of handling a government. So if you devolved agriculture, you will find that most counties ended up hiring almost 99% of the staff. And they had another workforce which was transferred to them from the local authorities who were basically doing nothing. I can give an example of situations where you will find, you go to an office, there's a secretary who has been hired, and there's a secretary who was there because that former secretary did not have the capacity to even use a computer. So you hire another secretary who then is earning less than the former secretary who is less qualified, earning more. So those were some of, because of the SRC guidelines in terms of salaries. But because those ones had moved through pay groups for some time, they were actually earning more, and yet they were not qualified to handle the jobs that the new ones were then handling. So those were some of the problems, and those challenges at the county level are still there. Because the counties legally, the only thing that probably national government should have done was maybe pay them off and retrench them. That is what the national government should have done. They instead looked at the cost and the politics of it and decided to retain them at the expense of the exchequer. Now, it's not the mistake of the employee to have been hired and things have changed and now they are not in a position to handle that. And so you'll see that most counties today still have, if not all of them, have more than 50% going to recurrent expenditure because of the bloated workforces. Even though, as we say that, there are also governors who went overdrive, of course, and employed more than which they should have employed. That's one. Secondly, I think in terms of the way we structured our counties, we did not think about possibility, for example, of sharing resources, especially human resource, across counties. For example, why will you hire a very qualified geologist or a very qualified GIS specialist in a county and utilize them 15% of their time, when there are other counties that need the same services? So we didn't think about, and the way we created it, County X, like for example, if you look at Bungoma County and Busia County, it's as if we are talking about Kenya and Uganda in terms of the capacity of these two counties to even think about sharing resources in any way, because these are different entities which cannot share anything. So you find a scenario where we have idle capacity in a lot of counties, which then will have been serious excess capacity for purposes of supporting other counties to get the same. Unlike in the national structure where an engineer will be seconded to a different place,
Yeah.
transferred to a different place. They will probably perform functions that will cover different places without restrictions.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's why some of the challenges that we have today, if you think about especially the workforce,
yes,
for us to reduce the number of employees or at least be more efficient at the county level, we have to rethink the structure of servicing the counties in terms of human resource.
Okay, Tabitha, Alex has just spoken about some of the a myriad of issues and some of the challenges that governors have been facing, and when you look at the ripple effect, it goes to the common mwananchi who is actually depending on the county chiefs to get the services that they deserve. One thing that we cannot run away from is the corruption. And perhaps most of the governors, took advantage of the situation that we are going to start from scratch to build these counties. And the fact that the revenue allocation that they were getting from the central government perhaps was not enough. And now most of the counties were supposed to generate their own income. This led to a lot of corruption. Can we say that most of the counties perhaps will still, have a long way to go because of that?
That's a very good question if you ask me. Absolutely, many counties will have a long way to go because what my colleague has just said, devolution was a fresh idea. And so when these governors or these counties were getting into, we'll call the local leadership or the devolution as it is, or decentralization of power, they really did not know what to put in place, and they inherited so many problems from the national government, even at the local level. So you find that in the process of fixing them, and then they have to also figure out how to make it better. And then there is this sale of revenue allocation to the county. So it even became more difficult or even imperative for them to, seek other means of, getting fund allocation or even generating income, which has impaired some of the functions of the counties. We have seen over the past few months, many county employees have not been paid, and we even seen them, saying that they're not going to work and things like that, and it's never really looked good, even for the face of devolution, if you look at it. So, as you put it very well, somebody will argue, is devolution, or was devolution, or the devolution decentralized or localized corruption? And somebody will say yes or a no, depending on which side you're saying it. But as I said, some counties, some extent, some of the leaders we have, and we must agree that Kenya we have so many of greedy leaders who do not really have our interest at heart. They saw it as an opportunity to root from us. They saw it as an opportunity, to misappropriate this kind of funds, exaggerate prices of buying some of these public resources. You even saw the example I gave of wheelbarrow, and even the one who made some gate from a very exploitative, point of pricing. And you ask yourself, was this the main function why devolution was brought for the Kenyan citizens? So who is really suffering when we do not have good appropriation of funds? Who is really suffering when our health system at the county, they're not functioning so well? We've seen some counties not even have very basic facilities, so that you have to move from, for example, Tia County to go to, let's say, Nairobi County for you to get best of service at the Kenyatta National Hospital. So we need to look at the setbacks that we've been able to have since onset of devolution. And one of them for me will be the fact that some of our leaders have not had the best of intention of the Kenyan citizen at heart, because you see, as it is, as a governor, you only serve 2 terms and you go home. So some of these governors, since they can't have the 3rd term, or we cannot even be keeping on revisiting the constitution, then they say we must have the best shot before we go. And that has been a wrong mindset for some of us. And that is the reason why, as many counties like Machakos will grow, and even Siaya is striving and trying to grow, then other counties will be complaining of poor leadership, and we want our governor to be out of office. We saw it with the
Siaya is also growing, albeit slowly.
Yes, I said that. Siaya is really growing. It's really growing. I'll say our governor is quite doing some work. And even Machakos, as led by good example and the likes, the Kivuda Kibwana's county has been doing awesomely well. what is it that we can learn from these counties? If you look at how they spend their resources or even their budgets and structures, you'll see they're quite different from these other counties where we have been seeing a lot of undergrowth time and time again. So it's time that we start looking at devolution from the point at which it was conceived and live with the expectation of the people really having these services closer to them in the sense that they have it at the best without, having our interests playing a part as leaders. I think that would be my say for this.
Okay, I'm coming to you briefly, but Alex, do common Mwananchi really understand devolution?
No, they don't. Say that.
I like it straightforward. They don't.
It's because
they really understand what devolution is all about and how it affects them directly.
I say that because I've had this discussion for a long time.
Yeah.
Just from why I'm saying outrightly they don't is because if you look at Mwananchi today, go to your village, ask them the role of the MP, the role of the MCA, the role of the governor, the role of the senator, and the role of the women rep. The answers you'll get will shock you. That just tells you that, and so ultimately, because of the answers they will give you, it will determine, it determines my saying no, because then they don't even know the services they're supposed to be getting from governors and the services they're supposed to be getting from an MP and from an MCA and from a woman rep or from a senator and the services they should expect from the national government. And because they don't, unfortunately, it works against Mwananchi because then when a governor comes and they have been in office for 5 years, that's why some very questionable characters have been re-elected governor for the second term, and yet they have not done much because then the campaign tool becomes a different subject from the responsibilities that they were given because Mwananchi doesn't know whose responsibility it is. And that's why you have seen in some places where someone will come and talk about things that are not their responsibility at all. And the people that are supposed to be talking about things that are within their docket are not talking about them. And Mwananchi cannot put them to task because they don't know that is what they should be demanding.
Everything is left for Mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa understands better.
So when Mheshimiwa comes, any Mheshimiwa to Mwananchi is responsible for anything and everything, including nothing. So when you have a situation like that, it's a pity that as a country, we didn't even invest in civic education that is enough to make sure that Mwananchi understands what the roles and responsibilities. You can't have a situation where you have someone electing 6 people. I think there are 6. Someone electing 6 people. Those are very many people. We needed to have taken time to understand. And IEBC, in my view, has some of that responsibility of voter education and ensuring that people then go to vote depending on, because if Mwananchi knew the level of importance they're supposed to place on those people, then they will wake up in the morning and go and vote knowing that they will know where to ask. When you wake up in the morning, and that's why I have said many times that sometimes I pity MCS and sometimes I'm saying that because even sitting MCS sometimes speak to me about fundraisings they have, about the challenges they're going through and they need support here and there. And I'm not a sitting anything. So
perhaps we should start thinking something.
So you see Mwananchi wake up in the morning, if they have a problem with food or they have a problem with school fees, they have a quarrel at home, they have sickness issues, they have a burial, or they have a journey that they need to undertake and they don't have transport. All of them, the nearest Mheshimiwa they will find, they will give all those problems to that person. And that's partly why governors have gotten away with a lot of things. Because governors are basically impossible to get to, especially for a common person. The closest the Mwananchi sees the governor is when they have public meetings and when they are told to line up for something. That is the closest they can get. But you cannot, as Mwananchi, walk into a governor's office and seek audience with the governor because you will never get there. Now that That's the reality.
Hard. Even us on this end, we go through a lot of bureaucracy even to get that phone call with the governor.
Yes.
It's hard.
Yeah, so that's why governors get away with a lot of things, a lot of responsibilities that were supposed to be theirs. They get to meetings, and unfortunately also when they get to meetings, they will speak last.
Yes.
So they have the right of say in everything, and anybody who stands up to speak anything against a governor, chances are that the governor will have the last say.
Yes.
And so if they want to inform the citizen, they have the platform to misinform, and no one has the opportunity of rejoinder in the same discussion.
Yes.
So you can see how the scales have tilted in favor of the governor and against Mwananchi in every aspect. So there are many things that the governors will have done. A lot. And I have always argued that for governors, please just be modest. We know you're squandering resources, but if you can just have a better heart and reduce that a bit, we can see a lot of progress in the counties today.
Allow me to ask Tabitha this. Tabitha, most of the governors we see were either politicians. Some of them were managers in different companies, some of them were from non-governmental organizations, and when an opportunity presented itself, they ran for it. So should it be a politician going for the seat, a technocrat, or a manager?
I'll say that the politicians or the leaders we have in this country, many of them are just politicians but not leaders, based on what you're telling me. Yeah. But then I like the point my co-panelists have just put out that our governors should, embezzle our funds with modesty a little bit. I mean, we know they're doing it, but they should not just do it in broad daylight like that. There's a question you asked, which I also found to be very important. That do really the common Mwananchi understand what devolution is?
What devolution is all about?
I think I'll say no, they really do not understand, especially when you come at the deep sides of the rural areas. They actually do not know why they elect an MCA, they do not know why they elect an MP, and they don't even know what is the function of a common ward administrator. And this is something that we were talking about voter registration. Many of them never turned up to do this mass voter registration, basically because they argued that we do not really understand what these people are bringing to the table. Because even when we just had the position of an MP, and then we had, we did not have the county or devolution before it came, our problems remain just the same, and there's nothing that is changing in terms of development for so many of these places, and therefore they do not see the essence of why we need to have ward administrators or even the MCAs and those other positions that were created on onset of devolution. So I think at this point, therefore, it's called for a need for the government to really look into ways through which they can engage the citizen in what we'll call mass sensitization on a key issue of knowing your leaders and their functions.
Meaning it's never too late to sensitize the public.
It's not. And I think if they can do this ahead of the next general election, then that is where we shall see, because they have been talking about us electing sound leaders, knowing what they're able to bring on the table. If I do not know your role as an LCA, then why will I be taking? If you give me, like, let's say 50 shillings and I'm a youth and I want to have quick money, even if it's 100 bob, and then I'll just elect you to go, and so that you go because you've given me this. But when I honestly know what you're supposed to perform for me as a leader, and then I also look at your manifestos, hand on hand, then I'm able to make sound decision on why I should be electing as a leader. So the government really needs to see that we are electing them at a point of ignorance, if I can say that, and therefore they need to enlighten us. The Kenyans who do not understand this devolution posts that were created, even those ones which existed before, and because you find that somebody is arguing a main road, our MCA is not constructing this particular kind of road. They do not understand that some of these functions are supposed to be performed from the county level or even from the national government level. They honestly do not even know what was primarily devolved, what was not primarily devolved. And we can't keep blaming them if we do not spend time to make them understand better. So that is one thing you brought out in this today's discussion as we even gear towards having the Devolution conference, and it needs to be relooked at and it needs to be addressed with the seriousness that I think it deserves. And moving forward, I think then we shall be able to talk about devolution in a way that we understand, even as a Kenyan citizen who is at the local level. When you talk about a devolved country, then you'll be like, yes, I honestly understand why devolution is good or bad, and the vice versa. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Manyasi, assume that you're given a microphone at the conference in Makueni, and you're given your 10 minutes to speak to the governors. What would you tell them as far as the devolution is concerned? And based on what she said, that Kenyans need to get a lot of information about devolution, the functions. They need to understand what's the role of an MCA and member of parliament, the senators, the governors, women representative, because that ballot paper will be so long. So that at the end of the day, all of us are at fault. Conference.
Yeah, my main pitch will be just around one thing.
Yeah.
And that will be the economics. Why I say that? Because of the initial remarks that I made around why it was necessary to devolve funds from the center to the county level. It was important because money was being distributed according to who was closer to power.
Yes.
And it gave the authority and more power to the holders of the pass to then determine whom to lure onto their side. And therefore, I will say one thing. Governors have a unique opportunity. And this, I will want to tell them that the unique opportunity they have is to actually grow the counties that they come from. How do they do that? Number one is ensuring that you're not taking tenders outside the county unless your county has no capacity.
Yeah.
Why I say that is because when you do that, then you build wealth and resources within the county.
Yes.
The amount of billions that the counties are getting, assuming it's 9 billion, for example, I think a county like Bungoma gets about 9 to 11 billion shillings. If you're spending about 4 or 5 billion on salaries and recurrent expenditure, my assumption is that you're doing salaries, you're doing tea, mandazi, whatever it is, you're fueling vehicles, you're furnishing your offices. All that money, if it ends up in the county, in the provision of those services, of course your workers are from the same county, and so that money is being spent. Your purchasing power of the county, I'm talking economics now, the purchasing power of the county is actually enhanced because your employees have money to spend on their parents, on themselves. They buy sugar, they'll buy whatever it is, they will, and that spurs the economy. Number two, when you give tenders to the people within the county, if they have the capacity, unless they don't, then also those people will still invest in the same counties. People will get money in here and there. They'll make a small road, they will make a culvert, they will repair something. Ultimately, they'll take their children to school. Ultimately, they will build a house. Ultimately, they will want to have water piped to their homes. They will connect power. They will employ a watchman. They will employ a gardener. In the process, what you do is that it reduces the burden on you in terms of even wanting to generate more. I mean, wanting to look for
because there's a circulation of money within the county.
Yes. So the county begins to. There's an interesting way way the economics works. When in terms of supply and demand, when money is circulating with the counties within a certain jurisdiction, there are certain things that will not have to intervene to make happen. So when you put resources within the county, you're actually making the burden on yourself much less because you'll have less people coming to you because they have something that is pressing that they need to look for you. Because you have empowered someone who is close to them, chances are that if they fell sick, you will not need to call for an ambulance from the headquarters. But the neighbor has finally the other day bought a KVX, which will then help a neighbor get and then in the process also basic things. If the neighbor would have piped water in the houses, there's a very high possibility that the neighbors will also benefit. There's a very high possibility that the neighbors will be used for the labor that will then be used for even the infrastructure that will be laid. The hardware across the road will benefit from the same. So these things will be more beneficial to governors. Let them not overthink about how to fix counties. Let them just utilize the resources they have. The other factors that come with it that are more complex can be discussed at a later stage. But if you're squandering the small resources that you have, if they're going to take all the resources outside the county, then they have bigger problems to deal with at home. And in future, then you create a bigger problem in your county, and you have not assisted the people that elected you.
That's now you're talking about the value chain, so that the hardware person, benefits, and the other person also doing the construction of the pipe water is also benefiting the value chain. But then, Tabitha, most of the governors are perhaps still struggling with the revenue collection. They still depend on the treasury. We have got the pending bills. I don't know how moving forward, because moving to the next general election, some of the counties, actually from the revenue collection from the authority itself, said that most of the counties are going to spill over their bids to the next government. So how are we going to make sure that moving forward, this issue is sorted once and for all?
All right. I think that will take us back to what you've just said a few minutes ago on empowerment or investing economically in our people. I always say that our people, we have very hardworking Kenyans, if you ask me, even especially in the agricultural value chains. They're doing several activities that are income generating. Now, how to get them from point A, where they are, to point B will be one significant conversation, number one, that I think the county government should have. For example, Siaya County is doing quite well, I'll say, in the agriculture and even investing in the same in terms of, capacity building the farmers, sometimes availing some of these resources to them. And even, just telling the youths that, we do not need to sit back because we do not have employment opportunities. So that we look at agriculture as something that is for people who, have no options in life. At least we can invest in what we have, and agriculture is what we have. So moving forward, for I know it's between now and 2022 is just a matter of months, but I'll say that if we can start from somewhere in terms of even bringing out structures on how we can resuscitate or even make better our local economies by investing and encouraging agribusiness and even encouraging the entrepreneurship behavior around us, then it will go a long way. Because where will you be collecting revenues if you do not invest in these economies and even encourage the people at the county levels to begin businesses? It's just, it doesn't make any sense. It's not logical at all, if you can say that. Because for us to collect revenue, even as a county government or even as a national government, there has to be businesses or even activities that are income generating. Also, I think with what we already have as counties, something that is very imperative is how now the structures that exist in the or even collection of revenue. I think that corruption still is what is killing devolution day in, day out. And unless it is addressed at the local level, that's starting from the ward. For example, we've seen that money allocated to the ward sometimes have not been used well. Or even revenues allocated at that level, they've not been appropriated well. The misappropriation of funds in this country, it is like a disease that is eating up from the top, from the bottom up to the toppest level. So if we cannot address these as from the county levels, then we will not be talking about a developing county in terms of even realizing that we have economic empowerment or even economic growth if we do not look at the issues really that is making us lose funds in, day out. And by the way, some of these funds are lost and we talk about them and the next week or the next day. Nobody's even there. We don't even see audits about them. I don't know where we are headed to as a country in our fight against corruption. I think what is killing everything, and we need to really look at it, because even if you collect revenue and its expenditure is not really accounted for, then we are not making any progress yet.
Okay. Allow me to make some progress by taking a very short break. And when we come back, we'll talk more about, there was this issue which was in the BBI, the 15% revenue allocation, which was supposed to be moved to 35%. Okay? It was a thorny issue. And perhaps I still want us to understand the issue of the pending bills. How are we going to tackle it? And finally, most people are going for this lucrative seat because of course. All right? We'll take a break. We'll be right back with Alex Manyasi and
Tabitha Ogutu, all the way from Siaya. We'll be right back.
Perfect. We are still having this discussion, and Alex says that he has a bit of experience as far as devolution is concerned. He'll tell us more. Okay. Still continue the discussion with Alex Manyasi and Tabitha Ogutu from Siaya joining me via Zoom. So, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to a close, I want us to understand the issue of the 15% revenue allocation to the counties, and then the BBI was supposed to give it to 35, but then the constitution says at least 15%. So it can either go, it was either to spill between 35, at least 35%. So which means somebody will say I'm able to give in 45 or even 60% of the revenue allocation. But let's understand it better. Are we still struggling as a nation, Alex, for us to get from 15 to 35 or even 50%?
See, first of all, that discussion has been very unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I say very unfortunate because the discussion has always been percentages without reference to functions.
Yes.
That's where I have a problem. So you're talking about
15%, 35% what?
Yes, that's a problem I have.
Yeah.
And you can see there's always the hesitance to release money from the center. Because of this discussion we're having. Because why would you want to devolve 70% of the functions and then take 30% or 15% of the resources? You see how that doesn't make sense in terms of mathematics.
Yeah.
So it means that we are not out of the woods yet, and will remain at this point for quite some time because the functions that we have sent to the counties to run are not commensurate to the resources that we are willing, not we have sent, that we are willing to even send. Even the proposals around the BBI was, in my view, was not good enough to address the fact that if you devolve 70%, then it makes sense to devolve 70% or at least 60% and justify of the resources. So that has always been my stand.
Yes.
But having said that, I guess when you devolve functions and you send less resources, then of course what happens is that the functions that are devolved, the governors will make do with the resources that they have. So if it's about delivering healthcare or delivering agriculture or delivering whatever function they have, then they would do that as per, if you have children in the house and you have 5 of them and your salary is 5,000, when you divide your salary, you divide according to what you have. You don't go buying chicken if what you can afford is sukuma wiki. So then it means also that Kenyans need to understand that what they're getting today, even if the governors were to spend 100% of their money properly, it's still short of what they should be receiving. That's what Kenyans need to know. And all of us ultimately pay taxes. All of us, even the people who think they don't, there are many people out there who think they don't. Anytime you take your money and buy sugar or buy tea leaves or buy anything that you buy, you're actually paying tax indirectly. And so you have a right to realize that your money is being used and therefore you should be getting services that are commensurate to the taxes that you're getting. If it was not about tax, chances are that the sugar that you're buying, I think 150 or something, probably would be 50 bob. If it was not about tax, then the amount of money you're spending on the small purchases that you do will be much less. So that's the bottom line. I don't know if I should talk about the pending bills at this point.
Yes.
Now, another thing.
We'll come back to that one briefly. Perhaps I should bring in Tabitha at this juncture. Tabitha, what is your take on that?
I honestly think and feel that at this point in time, what the BBI was suggesting as an increment from 15%, 35% to the counties.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was a wrong suggestion or whatever idea. The problem was, how did they intend to do this? Because even at the counties, at this particular time, even the 15% allocation still is a problem. There's still stalemate. Last year we were having problems, and the counties they were complaining of not being allocated funds revenues. So where was this other, let's say 20% coming from? What they did not tell us is how we were moving from 15 to 35, which if they would have told us, then we'll be reasoning from the point of, this is deliverable, this is not deliverable. But then I think all is not lost. They can still present it to us and tell us, this is what we thought will work for us. From 15 to 35, this and this and this are the strategies or the layers that we have in mind. But until that time, then, we have to see that even before we get the next general election, let us see the counties having their 15% allocation. Even if it's not 15, let it be something that is at least flowing, so that we do not have these elements we have at the counties time and again. And in relation to that, I think one of the key things that, as we even talk about the Devolution Conference, and even what it is geared towards, this particular 7th Devolution Conference that we're having starting at Makaway today, basically climate change. I think this is one of the things that the country needs to really look at and even have allocation for, even in our subsequent budget allocation, even budgetary and things like that. Because climate change is one key area, I think, that is really affecting us across the board. And even we were seeing during the COP26, when the former president of the United States of America was addressing us and telling us about how this effect of climate change will not really affect our old folks. They're just seeing it. I mean, they've lived through it, and some of these factors that we are saying as contributors towards climate change, some of them have really contributed towards making them. What really is going to affect, or the people that climate change conversation is going to affect, are the young people. Governance, climate, and even how to get through it, then it becomes apparent that the young people are involved in the conversation around climate change, and let them be ambassadors influencing on how we can do better. And I like the key points that were given by the former president of the Republic, of the United States, when he was saying, President Barack Obama was saying that as young people, sometimes we need, because we make the biggest population in any country in this world, we need to sometimes make it count through what we talk about. For example, even as we elect our leaders, I think in one of the key manifestos we should look at, even at the county level, is what are they saying as strategies laid out, so that we can make it, we can make our efforts towards fighting climate change, count. At the same time, I was saying that we may not be liking politics, because politics in this in our country sometimes have been seen to be dirty and not worth the while, but it really affects even how some of these policies on even climate change and even empowerment are passed. Secondly, moving forward, about something that I think was, if a product that is being sold to us as young, or even as young people, is not climate, and we are the people who are boosting the sales in terms of revenue, we can as well, not buy them, because we have the bargaining power. So we need to be really involved in this climate change, I think. And as the 7th Devolution Conference is set to start today, then let us, I'm really key in seeing the kind of talks that our governors are going to give in place, and what strategies they have in the counties, and even at the national to bottom line for me will be that funds allocation and what the counties are doing, what they're not doing. I mean, we should not be seeing individuals.
It seems we are losing you there. We are losing you there. Allow me to treat that as your parting shot, Tabitha. Okay, all right.
Technical hitches there. Allow me to bring in Alex, even as we come to a close, because I'm told we only have 1 minute to go. The theme is about climate change, even as they're holding that. And that happened around 3 weeks ago, where almost several heads of state were in Glasgow, Scotland, tackling climate change. It's an issue. And now they can say that it's been devolved to our country to talk about climate change. Briefly, let's talk about that even as we talk about the issue of pending bills in 1 minute, if you can. I've already told that we are running out of time.
So with all due respect to climate change, it's too complex a topic to even understand at the county level. That I can assure you for free. If you went to the county to campaign as a governor on the platform of climate change, people will leave your meeting because they will not know what you're talking about. So that's for sure. Secondly, it doesn't. What we have, our understanding. You remember, there's a time a leader said that rain comes from heaven and people are cheering. That is the understanding of Mananja about climate change, and how rains happen, and therefore they have no association between how their crops are failing because of pests and because of the rains coming at the wrong time and coming in the wrong quantities to climate change. They have no connection of the two. But let me speak about pending bills in less than a minute. Governors should stop spending what they don't have. It's just as simple as that. If you know that you do not have resources, do not budget and spend and give invoices or tenders when you know that you don't have the resources. Secondly, the national government should not allow governors to commit money they have not been allocated or they have not gotten from the exchequer. If they do that, then they must show, for example, there must be some commitment that they have projected their revenue, and there must be clear evidence that the revenue from the local level will be able to fill up that space.
And sustain it.
That has to be sealed. People have died, people have taken loans, people have been auctioned, people have lost property because they took money in the name of going to offer services to an NG and they have not been paid. Some people have committed suicide. It's a very serious issue that governors need to stop joking with the life of Kenyans, because when you do that, you have lost lives, you have lost opportunities. Number two, what then is going to happen is that the most of the credible people who can offer services then will shy away from offering services. Then you have mediocre services. Then you end up in a situation where counties cannot attract enough investors who can put money in because they don't pay. So we shouldn't get up ourselves to be boxed into that scenario. And therefore, there must be direct intervention from the national government and the counties to make sure that this does not happen again.
All right. Okay. I think that's the best time and the best point to leave it at that. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We've been speaking to Alex Manyasi, who is a governance expert with me in studio, as well as Tabitha Ogutu, all the way from Sia, joining me via Zoom, who is also a governance expert, as well as a political analyst. Thank you so much for your valid company. And of course, that Devolution conference begins today in Makueni County. Whatever is going to happen there, Makueni people, it's your time to enjoy the moment. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back with more.